I'll second it. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Thank you, that's carried. So item 3, draft annual plan. Fire away, gents.
Yeah, Atamaria, your worship and councillors, and thank you for that introduction. Yeah, you've summarised very well, your worship, what the purpose of the meeting is. It's for us to be given direction and confirmation, really, of a number of parameters and inputs into building the draft annual plan, which will come back in February next year for adoption, so it can go and be consulted on and so on. And there's really 2 parts to it. There's the structure and the inputs to the annual plan, and the second part is the transport program, which has a number of matters still to be resolved, and we did say they would come back for a decision before the draft annual plan was adopted. But with that, I'll hand over to Peter to provide more detail on the progress and structure of the report.
Right, good morning everybody. Look, I propose to spend, we've got a decent session today. I propose to spend 5 minutes at the start just telling the story of how we got here, so that when we get to the levers and options, there's a shared understanding around the table of our parameters and how things work. Obviously, you'll all remember adopting the long-term plan back in June. That contained, I'm looking at the report here at section 4.4. There's a little table there that talks about what made up the rates increase for this year in the long-term plan, for the long-term plan. There was a rates increase of 8.48%, which contained, very briefly, Parakiore staff, Climate Resilience Fund, Takaha interest, CapEx, rating growth. A mix of ingredients and decisions was behind that 8.48. So that's the foundation stone. From there, we held a meeting in August, I should say a workshop, council workshop, to understand what process you wanted to follow for this annual plan. The guidance we had was that it was to be an annual plan, that it would be consulted on with the community, but we would not be amending the LTP. So staff have taken that guidance and built accordingly. So in now section 4.5, there's the ups and downs since you adopted the LTP. So there's various things in there, lots of small stuff, ups and downs, some significant and late ones. Taumata Arawai have added a levy, which has impacted on our rates, and other minor adjustments there, some of them internal. The net result of all those ups and downs is that in the space of only a few months, you ended up with a raw draft position of around 10%. So the objective here is to discuss and debate what guidance staff need to will get around the draft. There's a series of options in section 4.29 designed to bring that raw number down in a practical way. They range from quite conservative to throw all stops right now. I'll briefly step through those, and then our colleagues in finance here can talk to detail as required. Option 1, to bring that raw number down, is the most conservative option, and it's using both subvention credits and operating surplus to reduce debt. Option 2 is quite similar but a slightly different mix. Option 3 is the staff recommended option, which sees us basically at the LTP level of rates, plus the Taumata Arawai levy on top that has come through from the Crown.
And that was only last week we got.
And that was only last week. At this time last week, we were actually back at the original LTP rates increase. And option 4 is basically all in reduced rates in the short term, but there is an impact in year 2. So look, that is the very quick potted history and options available to us. Obviously, there's a plethora of questions. Mr. Chair, some guidance on what you'd like a process from here. Are we continuing through with the report, taking questions? I'm not quite sure how you want to go from here.
Well, this is just item 3 we're talking about?
That's correct.
Yeah, well, we've got a number of questions, about 4 at the moment. That's all right. We might as well do those, and then we'll move forward after that. I've got you, Pauline. Yeah. Aaron first, please.
Yeah, so the Tamata Arawai pre-Christmas surprise, why, where and how has that come about? And that would seem a considerable amount, 1/3% on rates, just for a regulator that's already there. Like, are they increasing back office staff by a couple of thousand, or, well, I mean, what's the plan?
Through you, Mr Mayor, I can answer that. The levies, we were notified that there's levies coming in effective from 1st of July next year. There's one for Tamata Arawai and one for Commerce Commission. They're based on population base, and it essentially recovers something in the order of $19 million of their 23, $24 million running costs.
So
and that's being spread right across the country. So there's consultation out at the moment, which we'll be putting in responses to.
So what is the regulator going to be doing in the future that's suddenly costing $22 million more that they're not doing now? And what on earth is the Comcom doing that we would possibly need?
Yeah, Councillor, they won't be doing anything different. It's just that the costs will be going to the territorial authorities as opposed to being funded from tax. So it's the same cost to run them, but this is a levy to operate. And Commerce Commission, there's new legislation out either this week or next week. They'll be taking an overview of the Three Waters operations right across the country going forward.
Hang on, if it's going to the TAs, aren't we running the water ourselves? So do we put this levy on ourselves?
This is for them to carry out their regulatory function to ensure that we are complying.
Right, so this is just a new way of the government charging, so getting costs down.
We'll respond to that in our submission.
And the Comcom one, what are they doing that would possibly need?
They're the economic regulator, and they will be coming in to make sure that we presume, we haven't seen the legislation yet, presume to ensure that money that is collected for water is spent on water, which is part of the ring fencing.
So like just a note that the auditors could do.
I won't get into that debate, Councillor.
Andre, please.
Sorry if I've missed this. The cost per year that's estimated, looking by that, I'm assuming between 2 and 3 million?
Yes, Councillor, that's correct. It's just north of $2 million total.
Thank you.
Tyler?
Kia ora, guys. Just have a question around option 3. Is the subvention receipts applied to 26, 27 and 27, 28 also?
Through you, Mr Mayor, and good morning all. It's just for the first 2 years we've gone out, so $6 million in year one of the proposal and $5 million in year two. It's as far as we could go out with any, I guess, level of confidence of being able to get the funds. Yep.
Okay. And with the stadium costs, when does that percentage stop? So is that when it's built?
Again, through you, Mr Mayor. So what we're putting in for the cost of the stadium is the additional cost coming in through the rates. So once we've reached borrowed the amount in the following year from that, as Pete explained earlier, when we borrow, it's effectively a 2-year cost.
Okay.
So once that's reached capacity, but there will be ongoing commitments through to venues Otautahi. Yep.
Okay. No, that's great. Thank you.
Pauline?
Thank you. Look, mine was also on Tamata Arawai because actually previously it was the Ministry of Health had the responsibility of overseeing the water regulation, and for me it seems like it's a government department should be picking up the tab for this. Did you say that we are going to that they are consulting on this?
Yes, yes, that is correct. There's a separate consultation for the Tamata Arawai levy and for the Commerce Commission levy.
Right, and so will we see that, or is it at staff level?
Staff will put in and staff will put in a submission on it. Unfortunately, it closes while most of you are still away and in recess, but we will memo out to let you know what it is. The Tamata ROI consultation is an online survey type thing. The Commerce Commission is a bit more in depth.
Well, are you intending to hit hard in this one? To fight back? Quite hard. Well, I mean, it's terrible. I mean, the spotlight is on all this government, costs that they're putting on local government. Here's just another example. A 0.28% increase on our rates is huge.
Yep.
And it begs the question, should we be looking at this as our own levy, a targeted levy separated out in our rates?
And that may be a decision for the consultation so that we can point out what those extra costs
Can
are.
I suggest that we do that? We put that in as a separate levy?
We could also see whether we can fit it in on a Tuesday briefing, just so you have the overview and give some direction. But we will have to write it while you're away. But we'll see if we can.
Yeah,
It's a good idea. Yep.
Yeah.
This information has really only just arrived in the last week or so, and we had to hurriedly get something in the annual plan because it was going to be due as of starting July next year. So
I understand that. I
just
mean,
make that
it's a
provision.
terrible process. Thank you.
Mark, please.
No, thank you. My question's been covered.
Okay, Sarah?
Thanks. I'll just leave that one because if we're going to have a Tuesday briefing, I'll deal with it then. But 3D looks at the financial prudence benchmarks, and I'm just wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about that and decisions that we might have made in the LTP that have impacted that work and what we've done, around that sort of rating for renewals and those kind of things to bring that a little bit more back in line.
Sorry. Yeah.
And how that's how the advice has changed around that.
Certainly through you, Mr. Mayor. We have as part of the financial strategy, a plan to get to fully funding of renewals, moving it from debt funding to funding by rates. And it hasn't been a linear progression. It's been quite bumpy in parts. And as part of the LTP and the previous annual plan was agreed to look at that, perhaps lengthen the time that we actually take to get to fully funding for renewals and smooth out some of that lumpiness, which we have done. The impact of that is that twofold. One is that the rates have come down an amount in the early year. We were looking for that, particularly in the RTP. We paused rating for renewals for 2 years, so the rates were able to be mitigated by that amount. So the impact of that is then we need to borrow in the latter years, effectively. We borrow then rather than move it to rating, so there's the debt increases because of that. Does that answer your question?
We've changed that because it actually increases costs to ratepayers over the 10 years. And so we've made some changes in that, is that right, to try and mitigate against some unintended consequences of that decision?
Through you again, Mr. Mayor. That's correct. So the proposal for the next 3 years or annual plans, so starting in the year under question, is $5 million in each year. So that would be $5 million in 25-26, 10-26-27, and 15 and 27-28. That enables us to meet the balance benchmark metric by the 27-28 year. Okay.
So, but is there the potential for us to consult on increasing the rating for renewals by more than 5 million? So, because that was the original resolution. So, because 5 million is well under 1% of rates, and we were looking at higher than that.
Again, through you, Mr. Mayor. Look, absolutely, that is on the table. We haven't modelled that because we've got 5, 10, 15.
As an option.
But certainly we could put that up as part of the consultation to increase that.
Are you able to bring us information in time for the draft adoption that would enable us to work out whether we did consult on that or not.
Look, if it was sorry, Mr. Mayor, if it was the will of council to look at that as part of a consultation, then we would put a model together and with some options of what that could look
But
like.
we'd need to know what it looked like before we decided on whether we wanted to consult, if that makes sense. So if we could get the information on that,
it
it'd
certainly
save
does.
us significant money over that 10 years.
It could do.
Yeah.
And so some guidance on the level of amount that you'd be considering would be helpful. Yep.
Okay, but we don't have to do that today.
That's correct.
We can get that. Okay, thanks.
Sam?
A few things, but probably just on that one, if we are looking at it, we probably should get a steer from the council as to where we want to get that information, because the whole point of, and I'm not saying we shouldn't do it, but we should get an indication today. There's no point in doing a heap of work if it's going to get rejected. And that, I think that's what you were saying.
Through you, Your Worship, yes, correct. I think to do modelling, can we get an indication that you would like us to bring back some modelling on additional rating for renewals in time to make a decision for the draft annual plan?
So I think
is that as I've understood it?
Maybe what would be helpful is we do that later on.
Potentially do that when we're looking at other motions.
Yeah.
Further down, and actually have a formal. Yeah, that'd be great.
Yep.
Thanks, Sarah.
Cool.
Thank you.
Okay. So the first one is the around the Three Waters stuff as well, and I just wonder. Definitely bring it to us if you get time, in the new year. But you could go back also and have a look at the initial Three Waters proposals that were done 3 years ago with the other structure. I know we fed back then that we were unhappy with that approach because it was also, this isn't a new problem and that it was proposed to do it under that existing structure. So we could probably pick that up. The next one, Bede, I just wondered, can you talk me through, I'm sort of looking at this here, but then looking out and going, we've got the new Three Waters structure. Obviously, the Comcom are getting involved, which should help as well. What do you think that will do to a balanced budget? Because there's obviously different financial parameters around that going forward. Have you got a view on that yet?
Through you, Your Worship, a little bit difficult to speculate because we're waiting for the legislation that is imminent before we know exactly what they're going to do. But given what has driven the local water done well and the reform, I expect that we will see an increase in, or an expectation there'll be an increase in rating for renewals in order to deliver the capital that's required. But I don't know for sure. But I doubt it will go backwards. My expectation is it would increase, in which case it will. That would drive would support a balanced budget out in future years.
Yeah,
but soon to tell, but that would be my expectation.
Okay, all right, that's good to know. Thanks. And just the other one at the moment, and sorry, Peter, I don't know if we're onto it yet, but I've jumped ahead in the pack. Just around the pay equity, living wage, and settlement adjustments of, it looks like about $6 million. Can someone talk me through that? Because I thought there would be a baseline baked into the budget, so I'm thinking either it's 6 million or actually it's more than 6 million.
Yeah, look, we've done our best to estimate, if you like, what an amount is, but we don't really have clarity over that number because the matter is still going on. So we've simply put a provision in through you, Your Worship. That's really where we're at on that number. So I don't, that number, the 6 million there covered other remuneration matters as well. It wasn't just the living wage. There were other remuneration adjustments embedded in it. The living wage component is part of it, but we don't really have any visibility, and we've made a provision for that.
Do we know, though, I guess what stands out to me is we obviously would have had a baseline baked into the LTP.
Correct.
So what's the sort of cumulative effect of that? And that if you got 6 million additional now, I'm assuming there's a couple of million already sitting in the baseline budget.
Yes, so as you can see, so in very round order terms, from the current financial year, we're in at about 265, it goes to 277. That was what was in the LTP. This is on top of that, and living wages, the pay equity is a component of it, but there are some other parts that have driven it as well.
So that's like an 18 mil sort of overall increase with what's in the baseline and what's proposed here.
265, sort of in that order, of which 12 to 13 had been 12 to 13 had already been budgeted for.
Yep.
And part of that, of course, was for areas like Parakiori coming online, and the additional remuneration drove some of that 265 to 277.
Right. Okay. And just
Yes, and I beg your pardon, and parks.
yeah. Okay. And just the other one, and I know it's one we've raised before around the staff capitalisation reduction. So we've had this raised at audit and risk previously, and it seems to be an issue that we get picked up at year end most of the time. Can you just give me confidence that we are on a routine basis reviewing our capital budget so we don't get caught out?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's absolutely we can, and that's what the reason why that line item is in there. Looking at methodology, looking at process, and making sure that we only capture that
What can
time
be
and cost
capitalised?
that is appropriate. Yep.
Okay. Cool. Thank you. Cheers.
Okay, Yanni, please.
Thanks. So just legally, are we required to pay the money to the water regulator?
Yes.
And so that's currently in legislation.
So not yet. They're consulting on it, but once it's passed, we will be required to.
Right. And why would we put the money ahead of it being legislation? Sorry, why would we put the money ahead of it being legislation?
Because just reminding, this is for the annual plan. That's 1 July next year, so it will definitely be in place by then.
But we don't know what the outcome of the legislation would be.
We need to put something in there. It's not going to be zero. So we need to put the best estimate, which is what they've put out. It may go up, may go down. Yeah.
Okay, just one time here. So they've said here it's coming. We don't know the number. We will submit backwards and say we're not happy. Something is coming. If it's better than what we've allowed for, we'll get a bit of a win back down at annual plan time in July. But at this stage, we've got to factor it in as if what they're saying is going to happen.
And I'm still kind of confused. Is there any documents that we've got around this?
Yep, the document with the ink still dripping off it from last week. Is that right, Brent?
And we'll we have got some FAQs and bits and pieces, but we'll go over those next Tuesday for the briefing.
Right. Okay. And just, do you want any transport related questions now?
No, not yet. This is all item 3 at the moment, mate.
Right. So this is the one with anything non-transport related in the draft annual plan.
This is the first report.
Okay, cool. So can I just get an understanding? So, and I think Rupert's got a question, but I did want to move or foreshadow an amendment that council confirm that funding is available to get a feasibility report on the upgrading of Washington Way Skate Park to host national and international competitions.
It's nothing to do with this bit.
Yeah, it is. And provide an upgraded vertical skate element. So it might be helpful if staff respond, but we're recommending, we had a resolution in the annual plan around getting a report back on options. Obviously, that needs more time. But just in terms of going forward, I just want to make sure that we've got enough project or feasibility funding to get that work done in time to inform the final draft annual plans.
There's 3 things that we're going for that we're going to move in second coming up, and one of them is, has anyone got any foreshadowed motion? So that'll be coming up.
Yeah, but the question that I need to get answered from staff is, what is that likely cost? Do we need to make budget provision for it?
Yeah, Rupert is
cool.
going to answer this very well.
Thank you. Can I just get some clarity on, are you talking about exactly at Washington Skate Park or a different location?
So, I mean, I presume it would look at other locations. Certainly the deputation that came in suggested Washington, and there were 2 requests. One was for the vertical ramp, because that was for Olympic training, training for nationals, internationals. And then the second was what would be required for it to be able to host national and international competitions. So, I don't think it, I mean, obviously that's where the deputation focused, but obviously the feasibility should look at where it's best to deliver.
Sure. There's a few things to consider. I guess this would be OPEX driven in terms of a planning stage, and we're kind of estimating around between 50 and 75k. That would cover planning, engagement, environmental issues, geotech, and design and site locations. So around that number.
Cool. So there'll be my foreshadowed
Thank you.
amendment. Thanks.
You would, Andre, please. Done. Aaron.
Yeah, just on the submission to read the costs from the Comcom and the water regulator, because I think it's so important, can we get our submission, and it can be a very simple one, but I think the messaging to government needs to be voted on by full council, not just come up in the break. So can we have that for next Wednesday's finance meeting, and then we can sign it off and speak to it and so on and so forth?
To the F&P, yep, we could attach, we can certainly attach the consultation document and a cover thing and then debate it, yep.
Yeah, because I think it's too important to let slip. It's 1/3% on rates. So, cool,
Roger
thank
that.
you.
Okay, Victoria.
I think my question's way simpler. It's in relation to E3E and I'm pausing the targeted rate. Am I correct that it's only 2 years that are left on that rate?
Through you, Mr Mayor, I think it's 3 years to go. It was
Because the 4.16 says the remaining 2 years of the cathedral.
okay. Sorry.
Includes the current year.
Okay, yeah, that includes the current. Yeah, sure. 3 years to go, including the current year. So we're pausing it for 2 years. Correct.
Okay, and so the question is, looking at the funds that we've already collected and ring-fenced and using the current deposit rates, how long before we'd have that 10 million and ready to go? In the event that a small miracle happens and the cathedral reconstruction starts again.
To you, Mr Mayor, it's a good question. Look, I'm not aware of that number off hand. It's about
Okay, it may not be relevant. It's not relevant to today, but can I have that information, please?
for sure.
Through you, Your Worship. If we had a few minutes, we could give an estimate of the time frame and we can come back. It won't,
Yeah,
we just don't want to
we
do
are
it
going
off
to
our
make
head.
time for
Yeah.
breaks going
Right.
through that, so you can.
It's a good question and we can make sure we just have that number, but give us.
Better because, I mean, a miracle must be highly likely.
Melanie.
It's Christmas.
Mel.
Sorry, this is just a question from the tables that are included. So on page 21, this is the things impacting rates. Could I have a reminder about the digital budget increase? I can't remember what we were told.
Which one?
Digital?
Yeah. The through you and Lynn might be able to help, but some of those higher increases are licensing costs that's driven partly because, and I'm looking to Lynn here, but it's driven partly because actually we just get the rates go up in terms of our licensing costs, but we're also moving more towards what's known as software as a service, where we get the software and we have an arrangement where we pay an operating license rather than buying the software and putting it in on our system as capital. So if we do the buying of the software and put it into our systems, that's a borrowed money and that's capital. Whereas if we just get it software as a service, is a bit like a lease arrangement or a licensing arrangement, and we pay as we go, and that's funded from rates. So there's a sort of a couple of drivers there that are driving that cost up.
So what's the benefit of leasing as a service?
Yeah.
So this is very common across all organisations, and increasingly over the last few years, many organisations have moved from CapEx to OpEx, and that includes digital subscriptions in libraries, etc., etc. So it's the trend. The benefits are that we are able to maintain our upgrades as we go. We're not investing a whole lot of money into capital, which is then depreciated over very short periods of time. So it's a more accurate reflection of exactly what service we're getting. So that's really the key drivers. The other element here is that we are increasing staff in certain facilities, and nowadays most of our staff actually have to have access to digital in order to do their jobs. So there's a combination of increase in volume, increase in price, and a switch from CapEx to OpEx.
And through just by a couple of other points, Your Worship, to add to that, is it allows a slightly more targeted use of who needs what software rather than just putting it on. So it's a bit more, and it also enables greater security around our cyber security systems and so on, because the upgrades come through on a regular basis and are done really as part of the licence. So there are a number of benefits to it.
Yep, good answer. Thank you. Pauline, do you have another question?
Yep, just on the same page that Mel was on there. I just think I'm going a bit mad, but in the CapEx summary of changes...
He's finally woken up to it.
Reduction in borrowing reduces cost of finance. Shouldn't that be a negative there?
Page you want?
Back at... You had it up, had the table up a minute ago, 21, page 21. Shouldn't that be a reduction? Yeah, the second line. If you reduce your borrowing, the cost of finance and debt repayment. Well, maybe it's just the wording you've used, but I would have thought that would be a minus.
Reduction in borrowing reduces cost of finance.
It's the second one, CapEx summary of changes.
Doesn't mean we're making something OPEX instead of CapEx.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think there's a number of things in that space, and we've just tried to, I guess, minimise the words when doing the describing.
Yeah, I figured it must be something like that.
So it is we are borrowing, so the net cost and interest are down, but we are seeing an increase in the margins across the borrowings that we, when we borrow from LGFA. I'll have a look at that wording and come back. Yep.
Okay, thank you very much. So we've... Yanni, please.
Sorry, a lot of stuff's changed since we've had our workshops, and it's just quite confusing to understand some of it. So the plan change, I'm just looking at the staff recommendation on the increased resources to support plan change. The budget is being put into the draft annual plan, or it's not?
Consulted on.
Sorry, so
the resource at the moment, it's not in there, and the question is whether to put in and consult on that additional budget.
So okay, so but we've got something we know we need to do. We've been delayed at doing. There's huge community pressure to do it, but then we've got something that's not even in legislation yet that we're building into our draft annual plan. I'm just trying to understand the kind of logic around that. So is it? I mean, do I just move an amendment to put the resource in, a foreshadowed amendment?
Yeah, you could foreshadow.
To put that in and substitute the Te Mara Atarai
No, you couldn't.
levy? Is that the best way of doing it, or?
You could foreshadow. You could put it in when we get to that
The foreshadow bit,
yes,
which is
or
very,
other
very
motions.
soon.
Right, but what? I'm still struggling to understand. I thought previously we were told this was going to be in the plan. Now we're being told it's not in the plan, and we're going to consult on it.
The last the last briefing had it as a consultation.
The 26th of November, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the last briefing was definitely had it out and consulted.
Right.
Okay. Right. Now, yes, Sarah.
Sorry. Since we're looking at things that are in or not in, based on our decision the other day on the Kart Club, have we taken out any money budgeted for moving the Kart Club now? Is that a saving that we've managed to achieve?
We haven't. I don't think we've, through you, Your Worship, I don't think we've done any modelling on that in the annual plan as a result of the paper that came, but I'd have to check.
Yeah, I think that would be a good saving. Thanks.
Okay. So
I'd have to check.
It's CapEx money, but we'll.
Yeah.
Okay, so righto, so we've got item 3, just the draft annual plan, Recs 1, 2 and 4, which are just noting ones. I'm happy to move it and Pauline's happy to second it. The next one is Rec 3 and I'm going to move option 3 and Pauline's happy to second it. Then we've got, just for the draft annual plan, foreshadowed motions for Rec 3, 1, 2 or 4, foreshadowed motions, and then any other motions that anyone wants to put in for item 3. So what we'll do now, if anyone's got any motions at all, any other motions or foreshadowed motions, now's the time. We'll have 10 or 15 minutes and we'll get everyone who's got some to bring them up and we'll digest them and get them in the right
Sounds good. And I need to talk to you as well.
We'll find.
Yeah, well, it's not going to be quick today, so we'll take as long as we like. But we'll put this forward. Anyone's got any foreshadowed motions on item 3? We'll put them in. And if anyone's got any other, not foreshadowed ones, but any other general motions on item 3, we'll put those in. We'll digest a lot when we come back. Yanni.
It's just there seems to be like sort of two processes happening here, and I just want to get clarity. There's the draft annual plan, which I understand, that's clear. We move an amendment, something either goes in the draft or it goes out of the draft. But there's also the report back from the LTP with a number of actions that we were going to consider that would be done as part of this year. So, like, for example, the Washington Way or the skateboarding one that I want to move would actually be for this current financial year to get the work done to inform the draft annual plan. So I'm just wanting to make sure that I'm moving it in the right place or with the right wording so that it doesn't get delayed a year.
So my understanding is the previous workshops have reported back and covered all the resolutions that were made in the LTP for things that needed to be done in the annual plan 25-26. So that they've been reported back in the workshops. So the Washington Way issue is we'll come back with some information about the current what the spend is in the current year and what the future is. Yep.
Otherwise, I'm happy. We've got a parks, a sports report on Wednesday. I'm happy to move it if it's better to move it there. That's why I just want to get that clarity. So I don't want to waste.
We'll find out a bit more information in the break.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'm just reflecting back on the long-term plan and the whole bunch of reports that were changed because of, what was that word that they used? Materiality. What's happening with all of those reports? Are they coming to us before February?
So all, as I said, all the things, so there were a number of resolutions that you made about things you wanted to report back on, changes in the annual, ready for this annual plan. They have been reported back in the briefings and workshops you've had to date. There's another batch that are for subsequent annual plans, and they some of them are still being worked on, and we'll come back to you.
Oh, there's one missing, and I'm not sure whether it's coming in February or not.
So what's that one?
Wharenui.
Was that we've got a schedule. We'll see whether that was listed for this annual plan or whether it was for a subsequent annual plan, because that may be a subsequent one because it may not be affected because Parikori doesn't open, but we'll check.
Yeah. I think we've got another year left off the top of my head, but I just want to make sure.
So it might be a subsequent
weird timing thing.
Yeah.
So just so everyone's clear, if you've got any foreshadowed motions or any other motions on item 3, now's the time to do it. We'll go away for as long as it takes. Pete.
Just briefly, to helpful with some of these questions, if you look at the attachment annual plan staff recommendations presented to council, that refers to all those LTP carry forward actions, the staff advice and the staff recommendation that is baked into this report. If someone has an alternate view to the staff advice, this would be the place to put that forward.
All right. And Andre, did you have one question?
The agenda mentioned that they were going to have advice to us on the cathedral targeted levy by today.
Yes.
Do we have that and can it be sent to us?
Yes, we have legal advice on what can and can't be done there and how to do it. It's very recent. We can, with your agreement, Mr. Chair, we can send that out.
Thank you. Cool.
And Russell?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just in relation to the question that was asked on how long it would take to, if the funds were just invested, we expect to have about $5 million by the end of this year, and current interest rates or projected interest rates be about 10 to 12 years before we got up to $7 million.
Is that right, Vic? You've got that?
I don't know.
Okay.
Wouldn't be high.
Melanie and then Pauline.
Lost my page. With the staff recommendations of other items on page 24, so are those going into we're not building them in, but if we want to have, or currently we're not building them in, but if we want them to be consulted on, is that automatic, or will we make that decision at the draft plan stage next time? When do we make that decision on stuff we want consulted but isn't included in the budget?
I don't have the same page numbering you do. Can you tell me what item in the report you're looking at?
Well, it's attachment D, item 3.
Attachment D, item 3. Can you just give...
Light plan, change money, network plan, Southwest Dog Park, well, don't worry about that, Suckburn Park, etc.
Yeah, this is the one that I just mentioned earlier. This is all the staff advice to the workshops over the last few months.
Yeah.
And giving an indication of what the staff advice is.
But if we wanted them included for consultation, do we do that decision now, or do we do that when we actually put the draft out?
So you're saying not built into the recommendation 3, but actually included in the document for consultation?
Yeah, if we wanted to do it that way, when do we do that? Is it now or later?
Could be now or could be February, because what we're trying to build today is what the base is, and then additional items that we consult on could be covered in February, but you could indicate them today so we can do some work on them as well.
Do some work, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, Pauline, then we'll have 10 minutes.
Mine's just a wording thing on page 27 where we've got the Lincoln Road PT. Lincoln Road PT. And it says defer funding and complete business case. Does that mean defer the business case or complete the business case?
That's
Let's do that in the next.
Can we find
section.
it? Yep.
No,
the
we'll
next
do
one.
that in the
It's
next report.
transport.
It's a transport.
It's transport.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll have 10, and I'm sure it's going to be more than that, but so 10 minutes at least. So if anyone's got any foreshadow motions or extra motions, please come up and fire them in. Thank you.